Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Compliments of the new year. And let me take this opportunity to welcome you, to welcome the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, the Competition Commissioner, the Deputy Commissioner, who is also the Chair of the Inquiry, the Acting DG at TTI, at TDIC, and also members of the technical team joining the commissioners and the minister on the panel. And apologies for starting a bit late. There were one or two in-house things that we had to wrap up, and we are hoping that we shouldn't keep you too long with regards to the activities. And we have shared the background with regards to the to the inquiry, and I don't want to steal from what the presenters will be able to share the background to the inquiry, or to the fresh produce market inquiry. So without wasting time, ladies and gentlemen, the first speaker on our program will be the Commissioner, who will be making remarks with regards to the background and the inquiry, and the number of other speakers that will follow. After that, there will be the chairperson of the commission of the inquiry, who is going to take us through the process and the findings, and then there's going to be handover of the report to the minister from the commission, and then we open it for question and answers from the floor, but also to those who are joining us online. And I forgot to extend our warm welcome to those who are joining us online. Then thereafter, there will be one-on-one interviews which have been requested, so I don't want to waste too much time. I hand over now to the Commissioner to join me here to come, and given the fact that all the mics are up here, and to come and give her remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute privilege to welcome you all here to the launch of the final report of the Fresh Produce Market Inquiry. This is an important milestone in our continued effort to foster competitive and equitable markets in the country. Firstly, let me start by acknowledging the presence of Minister Pax Tau, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. Thank you, Minister, for your support and leadership and steadfast commitment in fostering economic inclusion and addressing critical market challenges in our economy. We really value your support that you continue to provide to us in this process, including for the inquiry. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the acting DDG, Susan Mangole from the DTIC, and the entire DTIC team that is here present. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the other departments that are responsible, that have been part of this work, including the entities of those departments, including the Department of DALRED. And I know that there are some of the directors who are here, the sector regulator representatives who are here, and some of the representatives of the unions in the agriculture sector that we have engaged with, that are here with us today. I also want to recognize the presence of the technical team. Sipho has already acknowledged them, and all the employees of the Commission, particularly those who were here and helping us in ensuring that this work is actually done. I want to also recognize the presence of the media. As you know, we could do the work that we're doing, but without your presence being able to communicate the work that we do, it is of no benefit to the people of South Africa. So we really, really appreciate your being here. I also want to acknowledge the Deputy Commissioner of the Competition Commission, Mr. Hardin Rachisusu, whose leadership has guided this inquiry. And I want to also recognize the technical director of the Fresh Produce Market Inquiry, Mr. Ruan Murray. So let me start, and I thought it would be very important for me to start with the gratitudes, and I think I had already started here. The exceptional team behind this Fresh Produce Market Inquiry, as I've said, led ably by the Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Hadin Rachisusu, and the Technical Director, Mr. Ruan Murray. There are a number of specific technical team members that I thought we often, when we talk in these conversations, just speak in broad and general terms about people who are, in fact, the people behind the work. And I thought today I'm going to take the opportunity to specifically mention them and thank them by name for the hard work that they have put into this. As I said, Advocate Ruan Murray, who is the technical director of the inquiry, Mr. Mohau Apane, who's sitting over there, Mr. Derek Bowles, who is also here with us, Mr. Ian Mrozek, Ms. Katlego Chweni, Ms. Nonjabulo Sambo, Ms. Zinhle Sio, and Mr. Peter Kumbirai, and Mr. Mwabo Ndlebe. Thank you very much, colleagues, for the work that you've put into this. It was in March of 2023 when we launched the commencement of the market inquiry, and that through your work you have been able to get us to this point and ensure that we do complete the work that we were intended to do. And so I just thought it would be very useful for me to actually acknowledge specifically you team for the work that you've done. Obviously, there are other members of the commission, the communication team under the leadership of Mr. Sipho Ngwema, and some of the events coordinators who have made today possible. We thank you for your work. The legal division team that has provided the support to the team, we really value your work, and in our view, it is through your work that we have unearthed critical insights that will serve as a foundation for much needed intervention in this in this very critical sector. So your hard work, commitment, and expertise are a testament to the high standard that the Commission strives to uphold. Please know that not only does the Commission value your efforts or the Department value your efforts, but South Africa as a whole is indeed indebted to the caliber of people and the nature of the work that you do, and we really appreciate your work. The other area I wanted to touch on is just the importance and benefits of market inquiries more broadly. And there's always a discussion about this. But I think it's important for us to know that market inquiries have become a cornerstone of modern competition regulation worldwide, including here in South Africa. They represent a shift in how competition authorities globally are addressing systemic market challenges that may not be dealt with through individual traditional investigations, which, as you know, narrowly focus on individual firms or specific conduct. What market inquiries enable us to do is to tackle market-wide challenges or distortions and identify any structural barriers that may be there in the market relating to competition and able to deal with them more broadly. However, we are mindful that inquiries may create, in some instances, uncertainties, particularly to business, and these are happening worldwide. It's not just in South Africa. But I thought it would be important to remember that as we do these things, they allow us, market inquiries, to engage with stakeholders and market participants more transparently in a collaborative manner to achieve better outcomes for all market participants and stakeholders. And I believe the market inquiry on fresh produce will show, and the report that we will be handing over to the minister will show us that is so. So why market inquiries are preferable? Firstly, as I say, it's the breadth of the analysis. They provide you with a holistic view of systemic issues that traditional investigation may not often help you to do. I've already said that. But they also allow us to deal with both business, consumers, and other stakeholders on the subject matters that we're dealing with. And our inquiries are conducted, as you all know, publicly. We actively encourage participation through stakeholder consultation, public hearings, and the opportunities to review and comment on draft findings and recommendations that we do. The amendments to the Act that came, you will recall, in 2019 allowed us also to bring about binding outcomes for certain findings that we make, thus ensuring clarity about legal consequences. But they also do something very critical, which is to provide clear timelines and processes to provide businesses and stakeholders with some predictability on how processes will work. The fresh produce market inquiry was no different in this regard. So these, for me, are, I think, some of the critical reasons why we need to ensure that we have market inquiries and that we operate them in a way that is transparent and allows for critical engagements with all sectors. You will recall at the launch in March 2023, we spoke a little bit about why this fresh produce market inquiry in particular was necessary. And I think for us, the agricultural sector more broadly plays a critical role in the country's economy. It has huge potential for job creation and SME participation, which are some of the key objectives of the seventh administration. For example, according to the stats for Q3 of 2024, the primary agricultural sector employed roughly 935 workers, or about 5% of the South African workforce. Further, and despite worrying signs in more recent stats, primary agriculture still contributes roughly 2% of the country's GDP over the last 10 years. Essential foods are further central to socio-economic well-being of our nation, and especially in relation to fresh produce to its poorest consumer, for whom essential food comprise a significant portion of household expenditure relative to other consumers. Essential foods, and in particular fresh fruits and vegetables, are also crucial for food security in the South African context of a growing population. The agriculture and agro-processing sector has been a priority sector for the Competition Commission since 2008 due to its significant contribution to the economy broadly and potential to serve as a driver for inclusive growth in the South African economy. The inquiry has provided us with an opportunity to not only better understand the functioning of the fresh produce market, but to identify features or a combination of features that may be impeding or restricting or distorting competition and participation in this market. It is appropriate at this juncture to briefly reflect on some of the reasons why the Commission conducted the inquiry. As with any market inquiry, the inquiry was initiated because the Commission had reasons to believe that there existed in this market features or a combination of features which may impede, distort, or restrict competition in the fresh produce market inquiry, and these may undermine the purpose of the Competition Act. And remember that this is a requirement in terms of the Competition Act. For the fresh produce market, this belief emanated from a number of things. Firstly, the Commission had been receiving a number of complaints alleging anti-competitive conduct in the fresh produce value chain. Secondly, you will all recall that the Commission had published a concentration study which, amongst other key findings, found that the agricultural sector in South Africa is characterized by high levels of concentration at different levels of the value chain. And you will see in the report that that factor is still a factor found by the inquiry. And what concentration levels does in markets, it does provide a base for a wide range of what may be anti-competitive conduct in various forms in those markets. Lastly, the Commission has been conducting essential food price monitoring reports since 2020, and the findings of these reports, the last one I think published in September 2024, depict alarming levels of price increases and volatility in pricing for various food products, including fresh produce. In some instances, these price increases surpasses the annual inflation rates, which raises question about drivers of such increases. This has a disproportionate effect on poor and low-income earners who have to spend a great portion of their income on purchasing essential products. The chairperson of the inquiry will very shortly, Mr. Hardin Ratchisusu, unpack the findings and recommendations and remedial actions of the inquiry. Suffice to say at present that the inquiry did find that there were market features or a combination of market features that impede, distort, and restrict competition, and they have some 31 recommendation and remedial actions that they will be putting forth for you. One of the things I thought I should also remind us of is that the reason or the scope of the market inquiry, you recall when we launched the start of the inquiry, we did raise that the inquiry was meant to deal with three parts of the scope, essentially. One was efficiency of the value chain from production up to the consumers, and to look at inefficiencies that may exist, particularly within the national fresh produce markets, and the role of direct contracting between farmers and retailers. We also looked at market dynamics of key inputs, including fertilizers, seeds, agrochemicals, to look at what the impact of these are on producers. But another interesting part of our market inquiry provision is to allow us to look at barriers to entry, particularly given special attention to challenges that are faced by small and medium enterprises, either in the form of farmers or market agents in this value chain, and historically disadvantaged farmers. The inquiry processes, and I thought I should deal with this more broadly, is that the processes that we followed were exhaustive, and they included multiple rounds of information gathering through information requests, stakeholders submitting information to the Commission. We conducted a large number of public hearings and stakeholder engagement. The insights that we gained from these engagement with stakeholders have informed actionable recommendations and remedial actions to address inefficiencies that we have identified from the findings, and to promote equitable participation in this critical sector. In conclusion, Minister, as the program director has said, we are very happy to be officially launching the final report of the Fresh Produce Market Inquiry, and will be very delighted to be handing over this report to you later on. It is an honor to entrust you with this report, which we believe will serve as a cornerstone for advancing competition and inclusion in South Africa in the fresh produce market inquiry. Let me once again thank the Commission team led by the Deputy Commissioner Hadin Rachisusu, and everyone who has worked tirelessly to bring this launch about. Thank you for the work that you do to this country. I thank you for all your attention and joining us in this important event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Now, before we move to the remarks by the Deputy Commissioner and the Chairperson of the inquiry, I think I need to bring to attention the fact that all the presentations made here today, including the reports, will be sent to you online. And all the questions, as I said, with regards to the reports, will be able to attend to those questions during the question and answer session. Now, to save time, given the fact that we started a little bit late, I will invite the Commissioner, the Deputy Commissioner, and the Chair of the inquiry to come forward and to make his remarks. And he will also introduce the Minister as he hands over the report of the inquiry officially to the Minister in terms of the Act, and the Deputy Commissioner will explain the exercise in that regard. Deputy Commissioner, I want first to acknowledge our stakeholders that are with us today. Here and also at home, we have the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Water and Sanitation. We have got SALGA, which is the South African Local Government Association. We have got the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. We have got the Joburg Fresh Produce Market. We have got Tshwane Fresh Produce Market. We have got Buffalo City Fresh Produce Market, but also the South African Union of Food Markets. We also have Agricultural Produce Agents Council, which is APEC. We also have our esteemed guest from Agricultural Research Council. The last group also is Council for Black Market Agents. We welcome our stakeholders, also those who are here, as I said, and those who are joining us from their offices and home. And we will as well try and make sure that the information gets to them. All the documents that are circulated here today, they get to them online. May I, Deputy Commissioner, invite you to come and make your remarks, and please at the end invite the Minister and also hand over the report as per the Act prescribes. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director, Mr. Sipongwema, Honorable Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister Parkstow, Commissioner of the Competition Commission of South Africa, Ms. Doris Tsepe, Acting Deputy Director General, Incentives, Transformation and Competition, Ms. Susan Mangole, distinguished guests, members of the media, and the viewers joining us via the live stream. Good morning. And when I prepared this, it was raining. So I was going to say good morning from a rainy Pretoria. Because it is good for agriculture. Today marks the end of the Fresh Produce Market Inquiry with the official release and handover of the final report to the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. I shall, together with the Commissioner, be handing over the inquiry's final report, outlining its findings, recommendations, and remedial actions. On 23 March 2023, the Competition Commission of South Africa announced the initiated Fresh Produce Market Inquiry under Section 43B(1)(a) of the Competition Act. The inquiry officially commenced on 31 March 2023 to investigate any competition concerns or market distortions that may exist in the market for fresh produce in South Africa. The fresh produce market is one of the most important sectors of our economy. This final report follows rigorous analysis of submissions as well as extensive engagements with stakeholders. The purpose of the inquiry was to examine whether any features in the fresh produce value chain impede, restrict, or distort competition. The inquiry focused on structural features and practices within the fresh produce markets. In this regard, the scope of the inquiry focused on 5 fruits, namely apples, citrus, particularly oranges and soft citrus, bananas, pears, and table grapes, and 6 vegetables, namely potatoes, onions, carrots, cabbage, tomatoes, and spinach. These are products essential to every consumer in South Africa. The inquiry conducted its assessment under 3 themes that cover the entire fresh produce value chain, namely efficiency of the value chain, with an emphasis on the dynamics around fresh produce market facilities, market dynamics of key inputs and its impact on producers. The key identified inputs were fertilizers, agrochemicals, and seeds, and barriers to entry, expansion, and participation. The inquiry team had extensive consultations with stakeholders on the scope of the inquiry before publication of the final terms of reference. Subsequent engagements followed with the publication of a statement of issues requesting submissions from stakeholders, targeted information requests to stakeholders to provide data and information relevant to the inquiry, public hearings, farmer workshops, engagements on provisional findings and remedies, and ultimately the publication of the provisional report on 18 June 2024. Following the publication of the provisional report, the inquiry received submissions and had further extensive engagements with affected stakeholders to ventilate concerns and refine the inquiry's recommendations and remedial actions. The inquiry has identified barriers to competition across the fresh produce value chain, as well as features of the market that impede, distort, or restrict competition. These concerns pertain to the following: inefficient municipal fresh produce markets, inefficiencies in the value chain, conduct of fresh produce market agents, high input costs, particularly for certain fertilizers and seeds, regulatory obstacles, and systemic barriers to entry for small-scale, emerging, and historically disadvantaged farmers. The inquiry also highlighted the limited access of small and emerging farmers to formal retail channels, national fresh produce markets, and concerns of slow transformation among fresh produce market agents. The inquiry noted that the fresh produce market in South Africa valued at over 53 billion rands annually, excluding informal sales channels and exports, presents significant opportunity for growth and inclusion. However, the share of participation by historically disadvantaged farmers and market agents remains low. This underrepresentation is a stark reminder of the sector's historical inequities and the urgent need for meaningful participation in the economy and transformation in South Africa. With respect to retailer pricing of the identified fresh produce, the analysis of the inquiry found that supermarket sales and pricing revealed instances of high markups of total revenue over what suppliers are paid for some of the selected products in the periods analyzed. However, net margins after the high costs of supermarket chain operations are accounted for are slim. This indicates concerns in the value chain, where high rents may be extracted at the supermarket level of the value chain. The implication is that under the current models of modern food retailing, supermarket chains are not efficiently transmitting prices obtained from farmers to consumers for these produce categories. This suggests that competition in the formal retail of fresh produce is not as healthy as it could be. Disruption of the status quo requires dynamism through new and diverse, lower-cost models of retailing that allow greater pass-through of farm gate and supplier prices. Localized competition, particularly from SMEs and HDP independent retailers with diverse models, including through greater procurement from national fresh produce markets, NFPMs, is required for more dynamic competition in the fresh produce retail. This in turn requires efficiently functioning NFPMs and effective policies to support alternative retail models. Further, to enhance the participation of SMEs and HDPs and to promote their ability to innovate and upgrade in grocery retail value chains in South Africa, and to create a fairer and more level playing field, the inquiry is of the view that the feasibility of a mandatory code of conduct be investigated further. There are valuable lessons to be learned and applied to the South African context based on the experience of international best practices. In the final analysis, and noting challenges in the fresh produce market and related distortions to competition, the inquiry has identified a set of 31 practical and reasonable remedies. These measures which include recommendations for policy reform, market restructuring, and targeted support for small-scale, emerging, and historically disadvantaged farmers, are intended to promote competition, lower barriers to entry, and create a more inclusive and competitive fresh produce value chain. In this regard, Section 43D1 of the Competition Act states that the Commission may, in relation to each adverse effect on competition, take action to remedy, mitigate, or prevent the adverse effect on competition. In addition, Section 43E1 of the Competition Act states that upon completing a market inquiry, the Competition Commission must publish a report of the inquiry in the Gazette and must submit the report to the Minister with recommendations, which may include, but are not limited to, recommendations for new or amended policy, legislation, or regulations, and recommendations to other regulatory authorities in respect of competition matters. Put differently, the provisions of the Competition Act authorize the Commission to make binding remedial actions to remedy, mitigate, or prevent the adverse effect on competition, as well as recommendations to government and other regulatory authorities. There are, however, matters the inquiry was able to resolve during the course of the inquiry, and others that may require attention after the completion of the inquiry. The inquiry initially noted a non-compete clause in Bayer's distribution agreements with 2 distributors with exclusivity. The exclusivity clause essentially required its distributors not to carry products by Bayer's competitors. Bayer later indicated that it had removed this clause from its distribution agreement during 2018 after the approval of the Bayer-Monsanto merger. Bayer agreed that this clause was not aligned to the provisions of the Competition Act. In addition, Bayer submitted updated agreements to the inquiry, which evidenced that the exclusivity clauses have been removed. In this regard, a remedy was no longer necessary. With respect to the initial concern in the provisional report on access to the FL2006 potato variety, SIMBA provided the inquiry with a memorandum of understanding with the Agricultural Research Council, wherein it undertakes to provide the genetic material of its FL2006 variety to the Agricultural Research Council. No remedy is thus required following the agreement reached with SIMBA in this regard. There have been concerns regarding market agents utilizing their own buying cards. Market agents' credit extension to both buyers and farmers, reserve buying and after trading hours or late sales or trading, as well as relationships with large buyers. With the higher than normal volatility in prices at NFPMs, there is an indication that large margins are being made by those buying at low prices. In this inquiry, it has not been possible to properly analyze the buyers, including segmentation by different categories of buyers. As such, this is an area the Commission may have to consider for investigation. With this in mind, I turn to the 31 remedial actions and recommendations of the inquiry. These remedial actions and recommendations cover the following stakeholders: municipal-owned NFPMs, and I'll mention this for your interest: Buffalo City, City of Cape Town, City of Johannesburg, City of Tshwane, eMalahleni, eThekwini, King Sabata, Dalinyebo, Mangaung, Machabeng, Matlosana, Msunduzi, Nelson Mandela Bay, Sidibeng, and Salt Blackie. Market agents or agencies, they will be reflected in the remedies we'll be presenting. Supermarket retailers, shopping center property owners, agricultural seed suppliers, government, regulatory authorities, and development finance institutions. On national fresh produce markets, this is the first category of findings and remedies. There were 3 main issues which the inquiry considered in relation to NFPMs, namely, whether NFPMs are operating efficiently, whether there is a lack of access by SME and HDP farmers at NFPMs, which could point to barriers to entry, participation, or expansion, and whether inconsistent bylaws may worsen barriers to entry, participation, or expansion. In this regard, the inquiry makes the following final findings. 1. Inefficiencies at most municipal-owned NFPMs impede, restrict, or distort competition. At the core of these inefficiencies is inadequate funding. 2. The lack of participation by SME and HDP farmers at NFPMs impedes, restricts, or distorts competition. And 3, the inconsistency of several key bylaws impedes, restricts, or distorts competition. To remedy the above distortions, the inquiry makes the following 5 remedies. Municipalities, in collaboration with the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, and the South African Union of Food Markets, SAUFM, must change the operating and governance models for the NFPMs which they own and operate, and adopt the following in line with the relevant municipal legislative frameworks. The corporatization of NFPM operations through state-owned companies owned by municipalities, with particular emphasis on the need for accounting separation. That is, a separate budget, procurement lines, and accountability through a stable board of directors, or the creation of public-private partnerships with municipalities retaining ownership of the NFPM's infrastructure. Municipalities must ring-fence profits earned from the fresh produce market they own or operate to fund capital expenditure, and where feasible, increase budget allocation for NFPMs from municipal budgets over and above the revenue generated by the NFPMs. The Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, DALRAD, should introduce measures to increase annual sales of small-scale and HDP farmers through NFPMs. To this end, DALRAD should undertake a review of the legal framework in which NFPMs currently operate. Such review should consider the relevance, coherence, and effectiveness of existing legislation in regulating the core activities of NFPMs, and possible changes that could be effected to improve the existing legal framework. Municipal-owned NFPMs should introduce measures to increase annual sales of small-scale and HDP farmers through NFPMs. Municipalities should, within 3 years, harmonize the bylaws with respect to the trading hours, rules for fresh produce market agents, and the use of cold storage and ripening facilities. The manner in which these bylaws should be harmonized is left to the discretion of the municipalities, who should work in collaboration with SALGA and the SAUFM. And following harmonization, municipalities should revise bylaws every 5 years if revisions are required to keep up with the developments in the economy. The purpose of harmonization should be to ensure that the playing field, particularly for SME and HDP players, is as level as possible between various NFPMs. On the conduct of market agents, fresh produce market agents are one of the key role players in the fresh produce value chain and act as intermediaries between farmers and buyers for transactions at NFPMs. In relation to the conduct of these market agents, the inquiry considered the following concerns: the prevalence of certain practices by market agents which distort the price discovery function of the NFPMs, factors which hinder the regulator for market agents, namely the Agricultural Produce Agent Council, or APAC, from fulfilling its regulatory functions, which in turn distorts competition. Concerns over market agent commission fees, that is, the price they charge for their services, and barriers to entry, participation, and expansion facing HDP market agents. The inquiry makes the following final findings on factors that impede, restrict, or distort competition. 1. Certain instances of the following practices by market agents lead to a lack of price transparency, price discovery, and price setting, namely the use of market agent buying cards to make purchases, the extension of credit to producers or buyers, reserve buying, also called stock reservations, and after-hours trading. 2, the lack of transformation in the composition of the fresh produce members on Apex Council, whether through insufficient rotation of members or the lack of presence of SME or HDP members is a concern. 3, the lack of a regulated maximum commission fee for market agents creates a risk for possible farmer exploitation. And 4, the lack of presence of HDP market agents at most NFPMs limits participation in the market. To remedy the above distortions, the inquiry makes the following 11 remedies. APEC should enhance and increase its regulatory focus regarding the above-mentioned market agents' practices in order to promote transparency around these practices. In addition, with respect to practices by market agents that I've described above, the Commission will continue to study these practices with the aim of considering whether an enforcement investigation and possible referral to the Competition Tribunal in due course is required. APEC should use its powers to promote transparency in produce distribution practices through, among others, incentivizing partnerships, supporting infrastructure development, training and skills development, and collaborative programs with farmers. DALRAT should, within 3 years, or alternatively as part of the current legislative amendments to the Agricultural Produce Agents Act, review the composition of the APEC Council to minimize conflicts of interest for produce market agents when considering matters that regulate the conduct of fresh produce market agents. In addition, amendments or practices should also include rotating the membership of the APEC Council's industry representatives to include at least one small or 100% HDP-owned market agent to represent SMEs and or HDPs on the council. DALRAT should, within 3 years, or alternatively as part of the current legislative amendments to the Agricultural Produce Agents Act, submit to Parliament amendments to this Act to regulate the maximum commission fee which may be charged by market agents. That is, to place an effective cap on commission fees. Such commission cap should not lead to increases in the current commission fees and should provide for discounts. In addition, the costs associated with transport, palletizing, and packaging should be negotiated or set outside of the commission fee structure, in line with the rules in respect of fresh produce agents in its current form. APEC and all NFPM's management, whether publicly or privately owned, should use advocacy measures to educate farmers that they can negotiate lower commissions with market agents. DALRAT should, within 3 years, or alternatively as part of the current legislative amendment to the Agricultural Produce Act, submit to Parliament an amendment of this Act to confer powers to APEC to regulate market agencies' HDP ownership and participation. This should be in line with the Agri-BE, broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Framework for Agriculture. Municipal-owned NFPMs should put a program in place to introduce new HDP market agents. DALRAT, in collaboration with both APEC and the Agri-BE Charter Council, should consider measures to introduce new HDP market agencies and make available to HDP market agencies, whether new or established, access to highly traded produce, namely potatoes, onions, tomatoes, apples, and bananas. APEC should enhance its current measures aimed at career development for emerging salespeople, including HDP salespeople. APEC should implement measures to encourage all fresh produce market agents to develop emerging salespeople, including HDP salespeople. the following large market agents: the RSA Group, Subtropico, the Grow Group, DEPA Market Agents, and Prinsloo and Fenter Market Agents, must for a period of 6 years enter into management agreements with SME or HDP market agents for skills transfer as well as training on managing the fresh produce market agency business. The agreements should be implemented within 18 months, and each management agreement should last a minimum of 2 years and only be between the two parties at any given time. On the market structure of fresh produce market agents, the inquiry noted that although there appeared to be a sizable amount of market agents operating across NFPMs, there are only a few with significant market shares. In the main, the largest players are the RSA Group, the Grow Group, and Subtropico. The inquiry's analysis confirmed exceptionally high concentration levels among market agents. In particular, for essential produce such as potatoes, apples, bananas, onions, and tomatoes, the 4 largest market agents account for at least 70% market share in major NFPMs. All factors considered, the market agent space is an oligopoly. Furthermore, the inquiry noted that African Rainbow Capital, an investment company, holds significant cross-shareholding in 2 of the largest market agents in South Africa, namely the RSA Group and Subtropico. The 2 market agents or agencies hold between 50% and 90% market share in major NFPMs for essential produce, particularly the trading of potatoes, apples, bananas, onions, and tomatoes. The level of market concentration in the market agents or market agencies space is of great concern to the inquiry. The concern is that the cross-shareholdings create an alignment of economic interests. The inquiry finds that African Rainbow Capital's cross-shareholding in the context of a market with exceptionally high concentration levels reduces the incentives for its investee firms, namely RSA Group and Subtropico, to compete. Accordingly, the inquiry finds that African Rainbow Capital's cross-shareholding in the RSA Group and Subtropico impedes, restricts, or distorts competition. To remedy this, the inquiry will recommend to the Competition Tribunal that African Rainbow Capital must divest its shareholding in either Subtropico or RSA Group, and that the buyer of divested shares must be a firm wholly owned and or controlled by an HDP. This remedy will be suspended for 6 months to allow African Rainbow Capital to voluntarily implement this remedy. And if this does not happen, the Commission shall, in line with sections 43D2 and 62C, recommend the divestiture remedy to the Competition Tribunal. On the retail of fresh produce, the inquiry noted that the majority of prices for fresh produce are not comparable between retailers from the perspective of a consumer. This is mainly because prices are presented on per unit basis, and these units are varied across the different supermarkets. For instance, one retailer may sell tomatoes in 3 kg bags, while another opts for a 1 kg bag or 3.5 kg bag. An accurate price comparison by a consumer on a like-for-like basis is, as a result, more difficult. The inquiry therefore makes a finding that the lack of transparency in unit pricing per kilogram or per gram distorts competition in that consumers are less able to compare pricing between retailers. This lack of transparency in the pricing of fresh produce on a weighed price per kilogram impedes, restricts, or distorts competition. To remedy this, the inquiry requires the following remedial action. Retailers, namely Shoprite Checkers, Pick n Pay, Woolworths, the Spar Group, Food Lovers Market, and Massmart, must display pricing on a per 100 gram basis for the 11 prioritized fresh produce products, in addition to any other pricing display chosen by the retailer. These retailers should, to the best of their endeavors, extend this pricing to all other fresh produce sold at their stores, and the weight price should be displayed in such a manner that a consumer can clearly and easily identify that price. Most of these displays should be implemented within 12 months. The inquiry finds that, and this is on the dynamics of input markets, being fertilizer, seeds, and agrochemicals. The inquiry finds that South Africa's reliance on imported inputs such as fertilizers, agrochemicals, and seeds exposes the fresh produce supply chain and the agricultural sector broadly to global price fluctuations. This creates uncertainty in the market and has the potential to impede, restrict, or distort competition. The inquiry identified pricing concerns on seeds supplied by Sakata Seeds and Stark Ayres. In addition, the inquiry noted the critical importance that institutions such as the Agricultural Research Council and Agricultural Input Control Directorate play. In light of this, the inquiry makes the following 7 recommendations and remedial actions. The DTIC should implement measures to support the local or domestic fertilizer industry where there is domestic capability. 2 vegetable seed suppliers, namely Sakata Seeds and Stark Ayres, have agreed to establish a development program for small-scale farmers within the next 12 months. The program will be dedicated to the development of small-scale farmers, of which at least 60% must be HDPs. These firms will provide training, resources, and technical support. The development program will include the following initiatives: development and providing technical training to small-scale farmers. This should include training small-scale farmers to produce good quality produce and training also on the types of cultivars that are best suited for the specific local area. Access to high-quality seeds by offering discounted pricing of up to 10% to small-scale farmers participating in the program. The development program must target at least 350 small-scale farmers in 3 years. The targets should be fulfilled as follows: 80 farmers in the first year, 120 farmers in the second year, and 150 farmers in the final year. Sakata and Stark Ayres to each contribute an amount of 30,000 per year to the South African National Seed Organization Development Fund for a period of 3 years. Therefore, this remedial action will reach a total of 700 small-scale farmers over 3 years and make almost 200,000 available for development funding. DALRAD should ensure continued funding for the Agricultural Research Council to maintain the National Gene Bank. The Directorate for Agricultural Inputs under DALRAD should collaborate with private firms in this industry or industry bodies to build capacity. DALRAD should ensure that seed companies sponsor new entrants when testing varieties for South African conditions. DALRAD should develop a single program which leverages existing structures such as cooperatives and extension officers to provide support to HDP and small-scale farmers in relation to technical advice, marketing, and the benefits of bulk purchasing. As mentioned earlier, the inquiry's provisional report noted that what appeared to be a behavior by SIMBA of discontinuing use of a closed variety shortly before expiry of its plant breeders' rights, and to replace that variety with a new fully protected variety. The variety in question is called FL206, as I mentioned before. Further engagements with SIMBA confirmed that any decision to terminate the ongoing commercial use of FL206 was premised on moving to better suited potato varietals for its processing purposes. SIMBA agreed to immediately make the FL206 genetic material available to the Agricultural Research Council, and have already commenced the process of importing the FL206 genetic material from a gene bank in the United States. To further promote this hugely positive development regarding access to a tried and tested variety, the inquiry recommends that DALRRD consider measures to enable open access to the FL206 potato variety once it is deposited with the Agricultural Research Council. On barriers to entry for SME or HDP farmers, the inquiry also noted that the production and distribution of fresh produce in South Africa resonates with the dualistic economic system of the country, where a sophisticated developed economy exists alongside a developing economy. Fresh produce is produced by a small number of relatively large, established commercial farmers on the one hand, and a number of small-scale producers on the other. The inquiry noted that the main risks which limit the participation of small-scale farmers are at two levels. At the upstream production level, these risks pertain to, amongst others, access to finance and access to water. At the downstream retail and consumption level, the risks for participation are tied to meeting the quality standards and quantity requirements. Because these risks materialize, small-scale farmers tend to resort to distributing their products in informal and low-income markets. Consequently, this implies that these farmers are less likely to effectively participate in the fresh produce market facilities, and their access to markets is thus limited. In this regard, the inquiry makes the following findings. The mandatory requirement by a retailer that is an SME and or HDP farmer must comply with Global GAP certification without concomitant assistance or benefits from a supply development program of such retailer impedes, restricts, or distorts competition. The lack of meaningful entry by SME and or HDP retailers of fresh produce in shopping centers impedes, restricts, or distorts competition. The decline in the funding provided by the Land Bank negatively affects farmers. Further, the delays in the implementation of the blended finance scheme impede, restrict, or distort competition by disproportionately affecting SME and HDP farmers. Delays in finalizing water license applications impede, restrict, or distort competition in that SME and HDP farmers are disproportionately affected by slow licensing processes. The inquiry makes the following recommendations in this regard. The South African Property Owners Association should promote industry initiatives aimed at facilitating entry by potential new entrants for the formal retail of fresh produce or related products. Certain large and or strategic property owners should use reasonable commercial endeavors to provide vacant floor space to SME retailers on terms and conditions that are acceptable to both parties. These property owners are Accelerate Property Fund, Atterbury Property, City Property Administration, iProp Investment, Moana Properties, Old Mutual Property, Pareto, Redefine, Resilient Property Fund, SA Corporate Real Estate, and the Vukile Fund. The DTIC should work towards the creation of a fund to assist new entrants in the retailing of fresh fruits and vegetables in shopping centers. The following supermarkets must use their best endeavors to maintain and expand their supply development programs in accordance with existing obligations: Shoprite Checkers, Pick n Pay, Woolworths, Spar, and Food Lovers Market. Dalrad and the Land Bank and commercial banks should work jointly to fast-track and accelerate the implementation of the blended finance scheme. The blended finance scheme should cater for costs of agricultural projects, feasibility studies, including water licensing and acquisition of land. Now, the Remedy 31, the last one. The Department of Water and Sanitation should continue its efforts to fast-track the licensing regime, including during the pre-application phase. These remedies are designed to promote a more inclusive, competitive, and sustainable fresh produce market. The inquiry believes that its work will lead to impactful change by contributing to efficient NFPMs in service of all farmers and buyers. Further, by enabling the entry and effective participation of HDP market agents at NFPMs through incubation and skills development, the inquiry seeks to reduce concentration levels and lower barriers to entry. Through the provision of access to a potato variety, the inquiry seeks to stimulate entry of SME and HDP farmers. By securing the development of seed farmers by large seed suppliers, the inquiry aims to lower barriers to entry and enable inclusive participation. By seeking to stimulate entry of fresh produce retailers and ensuring that pricing is more transparent, the inquiry seeks a greater amount of healthy competition in the retail of fresh produce, with an ultimate outcome to lower prices for these essential foods. Honorable Minister and Commissioner, this inquiry could not have been completed without the tireless efforts and dedication of numerous individuals who the Commissioner has already recognized by name. I take this opportunity to acknowledge the inquiry's technical team, led by the inquiry's technical director, Advocate Ruan Mare, Principal Analyst on Economic Stream, Mr. Mukhao Apane, the inquiry's internal legal advisors, the support provided by the inquiry's administrative and communications team, as Commissioner said, led by SIPO and Tebokeng Palare, service providers, external experts and legal team, stakeholders, media and journalists, the public, as well as Commission's executive. The final report will be published in the Government Gazette and made available on the Commission's website, as stipulated under Section 43E1 of the Competition Act. As required by the Act, the Minister will table this report in Parliament, ensuring that its findings and recommendations inform policy and legislative actions. We urge stakeholders to engage constructively in the implementation of these remedies and to collaborate in building a sustainable and more competitive fresh produce market. As I conclude, Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this inquiry's final report is more than a document. It provides rich insights into the domestic fresh produce market and, more importantly, a path towards economic inclusion. It reflects the need to address entrenched challenges and creating a market that works for all, from the smallest farmer to the largest farmer, retailer, and ultimately to the consumer. Market inquiries, as Commissioner Tsepe has already noted, are an important strategic focus area of the Commission to tackle high market concentration and barriers to entry in markets to achieve economic inclusion and transformation. This report, therefore, signifies the Commission's resolve in a transparent, objective, and evidence manner to fostering competitive markets that promote economic growth, economic transformation, and contribute to broader socio-economic objectives of the country. I am confident that the implementation of the recommendations of this inquiry will lay the foundation for a fresh produce market that is not only competitive, inclusive, and transformed, but also sustainable. I encourage all stakeholders to seize this opportunity to drive meaningful change. Thank you. And SIPO has given me a very important task, Minister. I think this task is the task you are here for, because without you, this report can just hang in the air. So we have to deliver it to you, and I invite the commissioner. I think maybe we'll come, I don't know, in there, I don't know where, in front, right? In front. We shall hand over this report to you, Minister, and then you will also give remarks immediately thereafter. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Honorable Minister Paxtau, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, to receive the final report of the Fresh Produce Market Inquiry.
Minister, in terms of Section 43, capital E1, I hereby, together with the chairperson of the inquiry, hand over the final report of the first inquiry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible. And thank you very much to the Commissioner, Doris Tsepe, the Chairperson of the Fresh Produce Market Inquiry, and Deputy Commissioner, executives in the Commission, senior officials here present, all stakeholders represented both in this room and online, members of the media and distinguished guests. Today marks an important milestone in our quest toward building a more inclusive, competitive, and transformative economy. It is a great privilege to accept the final report of the Fresh Produce Market Inquiry on behalf of the Government of South Africa. At the outset, allow me to express my gratitude to the Chairperson of the Market Inquiry, Commissioners and the dedicated team at the Competition Commission for their efforts in delivering this comprehensive and well-researched report. Your commitment to evidence-based analysis and stakeholder engagement highlights the critical role of competition policy in advancing economic and social justice. Ladies and gentlemen, the fresh produce market holds immense significance for our nation. It is not merely a commercial sector. It is a lifeline for households, a source of livelihoods for farmers, and a driver of food security. However, as this report highlights, systemic challenges and structural inefficiencies within the sector hinder its potential to contribute fully to our developmental goals. The findings of this market inquiry reveal barriers to competition that include inefficient municipal fresh produce markets, regulatory hurdles, and limited access to formal retail channels for small-scale and emerging farmers. These issues not only distort competition, but also reinforce historical inequalities and inequities in our economy. The 31 remedies presented in this report offer a clear and actionable roadmap for addressing these challenges. From enhancing the efficiency of fresh produce markets to reducing barriers to entry and supporting small-scale, emerging, and historically disadvantaged farmers,
and to the revitalizing the local fertilizer industry. These measures align with our government's broader priorities of inclusive growth, food security, poverty reduction, and transformation. The report reminds us that the fresh produce market, valued at 53 billion rand annually in the domestic market, and that's excluding exports, holds vast potential for growth and equity. Realizing this potential requires a concerted effort from all stakeholders, that is government, industry, and civil society alike. As Minister, I'm also mindful of my obligation to table this report before Parliament as required by the Competition Act, to ensure its recommendations receive the attention and action they merit within the prescribed time frames. The task ahead is not one for government alone. Transforming the fresh produce value chain will require collaboration across the public and private sectors, as well as robust engagement with communities and stakeholders. We must all share in the responsibility to create a sector that fosters growth, inclusion, and resilience. Let me reaffirm government's commitment to economic transformation. This report is a testament to the Competition Commission's unwavering commitment to advancing economic transformation. It reflects the power of competition policy as a tool for addressing systemic inequities, promoting innovation, and unlocking opportunities for all South Africans. The findings and recommendations of this market inquiry should translate into tangible reforms that benefit all South Africans, particularly those who have been historically excluded from economic participation. In conclusion, let me once again thank the Competition Commission and particularly the Market Inquiry team for its outstanding work on this market inquiry. Your efforts exemplify the critical role of competition regulation in advancing the public interest and building a more inclusive economy. Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, this report is a call to action. It is an opportune moment to build a fresh produce sector that serves as a beacon of transformation and equal opportunity. As I receive this report, I look forward to the collaborative efforts that will follow to ensure its full implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. And now we move to questions and answers. The handover of the reports, the final handover, there's a tradition that normally the technical team also takes a picture with the minister. So we'll try and make sure that there's a picture opportunity immediately after the questions and answers, just to ensure that the members of the team are able to have that photo session with the minister before he dashes off. So now I know Vanessa is taking care of people who are not in the building, who have joined through the streaming. I will then take questions here, if any. I think we should take 5 at a time, hoping that probably that will be the first and last group. But if there's more, of course, then we'll rotate between here and Vanessa, linking us with those who are at home. So I see there's a first hand from Nick. Are there any other questions? Unfortunately, the light is not helping me much. There's a hand right at the back there, and then also the lady at the back. So there's 3 hands for now, and there's a 4th one right at the corner. So if there's any other hand that I'm missing, we'll then take that hand in the next round if there's any. So without further ado, over to you, Nick, and then immediately when you're done, the next person will You have your numbers. The next person will ask the questions. If it's possible, to direct them to the relevant person. If not, members of the technical team and the panel are here and they'll be able to answer the questions. Thank you. Yes, you can go ahead.
Sorry, I was just wondering, for the Minister, if possible. Obviously, there was much made near the end of last year about you being perceived to move to unblock the Vodacom Remgro fibre tie-up. A lot of people said, they held it as a bit of a game changer. Obviously, you're here today as well. I mean, obviously, to support the report, receive it. I was wondering if there's any more on that. I know it's not specifically related to the fresh produce market inquiry, but obviously a lot of people are interested because it was unprecedented. I mean, to have a minister stepping in, people did welcome it. So yeah, any color on that would be great.
I think the second question was there, third, and then fourth right at the corner. Number two.
Yeah. My question is on...
Name and organization, sorry.
Okay, my name is Chipiwa Majima. I'm from the Tshwane Market. My question is on the remedial actions, recommended remedial actions. Are they legally binding? And then if they are, what then happens if they are not implemented by that party or the individuals that are required to see to it that they get implemented? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And number three, I think it's a lady right at the back. I'm sorry I can't see or recognize the faces. Please, my apologies. The lady at the back.
Good morning. My name is Nobukanya Ndambo from Eyewitness News. Just the first one for the Minister. What policies are there in place, or do you imagine government needs to put in place to lower the barriers of entry, especially for small-scale farmers and black farmers as well? And then a question around, I think it was last year when you released the prelim report in June, there was a bit of a pushback with the retailers who said it would be very costly for them to implement the pricing proposals. What was the common ground that you had to find with the retailers, the SPARs, your Food Lovers, your Woolies, your Pick n Pays and so on, in order for them to be able to implement the pricing proposals? And then, Minister, again for you, given the state of the fresh produce market at the moment, what are some of the implications for exports? AGOA, for example, our citrus industry is very big on that front. What are some of the implications for the trade effects when it comes to the state of our fresh produce market at the moment? And then a last one for Salga, please. In terms of the bylaws, are you able to give us maybe a bit, one or two bylaws that you would need to review to make some of the recommendations more conducive, or the industry more conducive? Thank you.
Thanks, Nobukanya. I think the last hand right at the back.
Good morning. My name is Maremo Mahlele, and I'm from National Agricultural Marketing Council. So, in terms of the transformation on the side of the fruits industry, I think I just want to appreciate the work that the fruit industry is doing in terms of transformation, in terms of the regulatory measures that they are, or the statutory measures that they are implementing, and then the money that they use for transformation. So, on the side of the vegetables industry, so what I want to ask is as to whether there are any organizations that maybe you might have identified which may be responsible for implementing transformation in the vegetable industry. Because in the side of the fruits industry, we have Fruits SA, which is implementing the transformations with the statutory levies that they are collecting. So on the side of the fruit, on the vegetable industry, is there any maybe organization on the vegetable that you might have identified? Because the private sector is quite good in terms of doing the issues of transformation.
Thank you very much. I don't know who, Rowan, whether you're going to lead in terms of the other question, and then we can come to the Minister in terms of the questions directed at him.
Right. Good
morning, everyone. So I think I'll take the question on maybe from the Tshwane market first about the legally binding nature. I think as the chairperson of the inquiry indicated, there are two types of binding remedial actions, and the other one is recommendations. So the recommendations pertaining to the municipalities, because they are part of local governments, are recommendations. So where the impact comes in is in terms of formulating policy, of participating in the policy and legislative frameworks when it comes to Parliament. It's why a number of these remedies are directed at DELRED, for example, who as executive government department is responsible for driving the legislative changes. So in terms of the recommendations to municipalities, they are binding in the sense that they might become laws in future. But for now, the Competition Act enables the Commission to make recommendations only when it comes to particularly to government departments. So in terms of the binding nature, in terms of the legal binding nature, those pertain to private businesses. So those would be things on the price transparency, things on the implementation of programs, the seed supplies, those things are legally binding. In terms of the question about reaching consensus with the retailers, so of course I think at the provisional launch of the provisional report in June of last year, even then the retailers had indicated that there's some discomfort in terms of implementing this price transparency. And I think post the provisional report up until now, there has been very distinct and very sort of good relations with the retailers to try and reach consensus. So that consensus, the wording that we find in the remedy and in the remedial actions themselves, the sort of binding orders that we make, we are with most of the retailers in agreement. And you would note, I'm not going to mention names, but you would note that already in some supermarkets, these remedies have been implemented already. So go check your price tags on your shelf edges in some stores. You would see this pricing already implemented by some retailers. And I think the consensus we reached was what particular unit of measurement. Is it going to be a per kilogram? Is it going to be a per gram? We ended up deciding a per 100 gram basis, because that is what particularly the large retailers, what their IT systems can accommodate without increasing costs to them and without increasing costs to the consumers. So that's one of the areas we reached consensus of. In other instances, we had to distinguish between the retailers. So one retailer might say, look, I need 12 months. Another retailer might say, I'm already doing this. Another retailer says, look, I need to come back after a year and engage with the Commission to see if this is costing me money, if this is actually working for our consumers, the way our consumers interact with our pricing. We've agreed on those terms. Those terms are as annexures in the final report, and for your sake, you can read all those on the different retailers. But there is some distinctions, but they don't change the obligation that there should be equal price transparency amongst the retailers. Right, I think then the final question for the Commission was on the transformation, the association that might engage transformation objectives for vegetables. And I think it's noteworthy, as the gentleman from the NAMC indicated, the fruit industry is a lot more organized than the vegetable industry. And it's something that we as the technical team of the inquiry obviously struggled with as well, because there's there's very few associations, and they're definitely not particularly as well organized as fruits, for example. So the approach we took in the inquiry was then to place those objections either on national government or on the local government institutions where the trading for vegetables take place. So you would note the transformation objectives, particularly when it comes to vegetable trading, are mostly aimed at the NFPM level, the trading level. Of course, then there's the vegetable seed suppliers. Stark Ayres and Sakata Seeds mostly supply vegetable seeds. So they are also cooperating in that sense, where there is development programs particularly aimed at vegetable seed suppliers. So it's not necessarily individual associations, because of the lack of organization relative to the fruits industry. We've made those measures concrete by aiming them at the place where they are traded, or then with particular firms. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. I think the rest of the questions are directed at the Minister. Oh, all right.
There's just this one point, and I think it keeps coming up from Tshwane. The issue around recommendations has been ventilated in courts, and I don't think it's that straightforward that you can simply ignore them, right? Because this report is going to be tabled in Parliament. It's going to be deliberated in Parliament, and Parliament would make resolutions out of it. So there has to be action from those entities these recommendations have been targeted at. That's why, as the inquiry, we made sure that we engaged with each and every one of those stakeholders. And what I've presented to you reflects the outcome of that consensus with those stakeholders. And you're asking about fruits, and I think that's why we are putting a spotlight on the fresh produce market. Because probably to bring in a lot of HDP farmers, small-scale farmers in South Africa, you just need working national fresh produce markets. You don't need a fund from somewhere. As long as it's easy, it's accessible for these small-scale farmers, they will be able to make a living and earn a living through this structure. What we are picking up is that it is only benefiting the large farmers. It's dominated by established market agencies or agents, which I think is a concern, which this inquiry has picked up. And I think the issue around bylaws, we've covered it in the report. It's really sometimes around trading hours that you need to, for this, because this is a price discovery mechanism. So if you open at 5 a.m., 4 a.m., I think it would be good if all markets are opening at the same time, and the requirements for these farmers to trade in those markets should be uniform, because otherwise a farmer moves from Joburg, goes to Tshwane, rules change. You go to Cape Town, you go to all these other places. That's why the SFUM is here. I think there is a big role, I think, that we expect the SFUM to play in this space. So, Program Director, that's what I thought maybe I should clarify. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you very much. It's not an easy press conference for me because in reality we have just received the report. So a lot of the detail we will engage with after we've processed the report. It has gone to Parliament. The department has looked at the recommendations and what it should do. But from the presentation, there are a number of areas that have been identified with regards to addressing barriers to entry for small and emerging farmers, issues of funding for those farmers, and a whole range of recommendations that we would have to take into account. So in essence, the difficulty would be that I would respond only on the basis of the presentation, as opposed to us as a department having processed the entire report and be able to then define a proper way forward. That notwithstanding, I think that there are policy recommendations that have been suggested. There are also recommendations around financing that have been suggested. And we will certainly be receiving those and engaging with them. What are the implications for export? I should say that we continue to work with the Department of Agriculture on improving our competitiveness, addressing barriers to entry to different markets, engaging in negotiations and trade engagements with our counterparts throughout the world. And there are specific markets that we are addressing issues, including, as you'd probably know, the declaration of a dispute at the WTO with regards to the citrus sector and issues that we consider possibly to essentially having been barriers to entry for South African citrus into those markets in the EU, particularly because the conditions are not applicable to other countries that have the citrus black spot, and so on. So you're finding a situation where, at least in our opinion, the restrictions placed on our access to market are unfair, but we've declared a dispute. The point I'm making is that continuously on the export side, we need to ensure that we remove barriers to entry, that we create access to markets. We've just had an agreement with the Chinese, amongst others, about increasing exports of agricultural products. In fact, in the list of 100 products that we've sent through to the Chinese, some of them are agricultural products. So from that point of view, the work continues from a market access point of view. With regards to whether the report itself will enhance that, my preliminary sense from the presentation, as I said, we have not engaged the report in detail. My preliminary sense is that it should improve both competitiveness of the local industry and improve the competition environment internally, including removing certain barriers to access. Nick, can I keep it boring and colorless? And let me explain why I need to keep it boring and colorless. So the Competition Tribunal, of course, processed the report of the Competition Commission. They had a set of inquiries. They made their findings, but have not published the reasons. And we thought, because we've been looking at it from an industrial development point of view, we thought it is important that we lodge with the Competition Appeal Court notice of appeal pending receiving the reasons. So we need to receive the reasons to be able to then comprehensively say, this is the basis on which we will appeal, and in certain instances we might come to a decision that's different from that, but we have to look at the reasons. Of course, because there's a timeline within which you can appeal, and the timeline has already passed, we needed to submit that notice to appeal. That's why I thought I should leave it as colorless as possible, to just make the point that until we have the reasons, we would not be able to go into the detail. In fact, it would be prejudicial to even the tribunal for the minister to make firm pronouncements in that regard. Thank you. As colorless as possible.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much. Now, if any, can we take the last round of questions? I've just checked online. We have nothing yet. I'm just checking in the next 10 minutes, 10 seconds, whether or not do we have any. Please assist me if there's a hand that I don't see. I'm picking up one hand, two hand, second hand. So those are the only hands we have, and those are the last hands and question we'll have for this press conference, and then we proceed to the next item. Thank you very much. We go to number one.
Unfortunately, this should not have been the outcome of an inquiry. It should have happened by default in line with the Plan Improvement Act, which is governed by the Registrar's Office at the National Department of Agriculture. But the concern I want to raise is now we are speaking to one Kaltiba. Is there a way that we could really make this statement a bit of a universal statement such that it covers future unnecessary inquiries of this nature? Because globally, not only in South Africa, but is part of the International Treaty on Planetary Resource for Food and Agriculture, it's part of the Convention on Biological Diversity. It is it's part of several other international and regional genetic resource utilization standards that once the plant breeders' right expires, that cultivar must find itself in one of the national gene banks such as the ARCs or the Dalrad Genetic Resources Center. So I just want to ask if this statement can be a bit more generic as opposed to just focusing on one FL variety. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Katla Walogodi from the SABC. Just a reminder of the timelines in terms of where to from here. Since the report is being handed over to the minister, what are the binding timelines, and when can we then see the process at least being debated in Parliament, at least this report getting the attention of the MPs?
Thank you. Ruan, the timelines in terms of the Act.
Thank you, Program Director. So on the first question, I think the comment is noted, and I think it's a very important question. It's something that we definitely considered is, one variety versus all varieties. I think also the problem in South Africa is that we have a fairly limited number of, let's call them modern varieties that were developed in other countries, international breeders that have gone open. In other words, where their intellectual property protections lapse after about 25 years. There's a fairly limited number of those varieties available. In other words, most of them that are currently in use are still under intellectual property protection. So legally, those exclusivities, we are bound by them, and as is the entire economy. Our concern was obviously what happens after expiry. We have two varieties that we have given particular attention to in the Commission. One was the Mondial variety, very popular variety. That wasn't part of this inquiry because the problems with Mondial were resolved a number of years ago. The FL 2006 variety was the next one on the radar. I think, though, that because we are evidence-based, the evidence that was in front of the inquiry was only for FL 2006. The report does, however, have a view about, and I think this view came from the ARC during our engagements, about, well, this should actually be standard practice. This is global best practice, where after the intellectual property right ceases, it is deposited in a national gene bank. I do think there's challenges with the South African Gene Bank, and there has been in the past. There are some concerns from these stakeholders about depositing that varieties. So I think ongoing engagement, ongoing discussions are definitely necessary. I think as far as the inquiry is concerned, we're taking this one by one. We've noted FL 2006. I think in general, though, it's a not too far a leap to say, once a variety becomes open, for purposes of barriers, for purposes of stimulating new entry, it's always worthwhile for a farmer to have access to a variety, for a tried and tested, a good variety that was developed by international breeders that have been in circulation for 20, 25 years. Everyone knows that variety. It's been adapted to our conditions, that variety be available to particularly SME and HDP new entrants. I think that's how far we can take that one. I think on the SABC's question on the timelines, the Act allows 10 days for the minister to table the report in Parliament. If Parliament is in sitting, if Parliament is not in sitting, then 10 days within the next commencement of the sitting. So those timeframes are developed by the Act or prescribed by the Act. As far as Parliament's agenda goes, that is going to be up to Parliament. Thank you, Program Director.
Thanks, Ruan. That was the last part with regards to question and answers. I hope that if there are any follow-up questions, of course, many of you have made requests in terms of one-on-ones, but also in terms of subsequent interviews in your programs. So Lydia is handling those, and then will be ensuring that each and every request is attended to, and there's someone assigned to your media house to be able to clarify whatever questions you may have with regards to the report. So if I may now declare the session in terms of the press conference closed, and invite the members of the technical team to quickly take a picture without delaying the minister, and make sure that that is done as soon as possible. And then we can have the relevant one-on-ones just outside, and then be able to release the leadership for the rest of the activities for the day. Thank you. The meeting is now closed.